Corbin from Vanderbilt Baseball here. And just as a reminder, I just want you guys to understand who are listening to this, what this man has done with his vision leadership. When I used to play in the SEC in 1994-95, we'd go to Vandy and there'd be 5 fans in the stands. You'd hit foul balls into the football stadium, but you always knew that there was this potential there. Coach Corbin has built a national powerhouse at Vandy and done it with a huge fan following. And I love the way that you go about things transparently. I love the way you develop your players, and I love the way you drive your players. So, Coach, thanks for joining me on this.
My pleasure, Brett. Thanks for having me.
You know, I saw your ABCA talk last year, and you went during your talk at the conference. You were bringing in something that I thought was brilliant, which was you chart, you monitor everything. Details matter to you, don't they?
Well, they matter to coaches. I think our staff, and they always have inside of our program, just because I think it gives you something to fall back on. I think it gives you foundation. And I think, you know, particularly today where kids are foundationally based for the most part, they want to understand the whys of what they do. I think a lot of what we do inside our training regimen is such where we can give them some feedback. So I think the feedback's good for them. I think the feedback's great for us from an evaluative standpoint. But we try to chart as much as we can. But at the same time, I think you can be wise and smart about how much you give back to the kids, because in a lot of cases they don't need a lot. They need positive feedback as much as possible, but I think if it's realistic and you have that information to fall back on, then I think it's worthy.
Do you, with the talent of the kids that you have come into Vandy, it's special. I mean, it really is. You've had 2 number 1 picks overall? Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, Dansby and David, and then had the second pick with Pedro Alvarez in 2008.
Right. And looking at your roster right now, I would say there's some potentials there again. How do you look at talent development with the kids of today? You talk about not overwhelming them. Obviously, they're smart kids to be at Vandy. I mean, I can't think we can be amiss about saying that. How do you manage that flow of content?
Well, I think the talent, and I'd be remiss if I didn't start with this. I think the talent has to begin in the brain. And it's not to say that every kid that we bring in is an Ivy League type kid academically, because they're not. Maggie and I had a daughter that went here, and tennis was her vehicle to getting into Vanderbilt. But at the same time, there's a responsibility knowing that if you do commit to Vanderbilt from a student athlete standpoint, that the priority in a lot of cases, and for 4 to 5 to 6 hours of the day, is the academic side. So I would say it has to start there first, and it has to start there with an interest level in school. If school takes a back seat, and listen, I know these kids want to play baseball first, but if it takes a back seat, then they're not going to be successful here. It requires that they're driven and motivated to engage their brain, and for their brain to move fast, and for their brain to enlarge. Since it's a muscle, it has the ability to be flexible, and it has the ability to expand. And I think the pliability of their brain is the thing I'm most fascinated with, because I think that you can do really whatever you wish to. And sometimes it takes an older person to show them that and also motivate them towards that.
You said something there that I thought was good, to move fast.
Mm-hmm.
These are very active people, and we're leading very distracted individuals sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're managing multiple pieces of stimuli on a regular basis. How do you keep them from being impatient, particularly at a place like Vandy? Because they are moving fast.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that word up, because I think the patient word is used a lot with us, because that's what I ask them for. And the reason I ask them for that is because a lot of times with kids, they're pulled in directions of older people, you know, whether it's parents, whether it's advisors, whether it's mentors, whether it's coaches. A lot of times these kids are pulled in directions that adults want them to go into. And I think sometimes it can be dangerous. It can be stimulating, but it also can be dangerous. And I think with them is when they come to Vanderbilt, I ask them for patience and I ask them, don't put any parameters around this experience. Don't. I think a lot of kids get into a situation and say, okay, well, I'm going to school, but then after 3 years, then I'm going to move to the next spot. And I just think that that's dangerous thinking. I think your only thought process should be just get better. That simply that. You know,
Yeah.
if you come into an environment every single day with a thought process of I'm going to get better than I was a minute ago, 5 minutes ago, or yesterday, then you're touching upon the right things, because at the end of it, Brett, there's a lot of uncontrollables, as there was for you as a pitcher with Coach Bertman, with all these players. They can't pick up a pen or a pencil and write down where they're going to be in a lineup or where they're going to be 2 to 3 to 4 weeks from now. So it doesn't matter. So the only thing that they can control is their ability to get better, their investment in what they do, and the patience for which how they develop inside of a program. Because once you decide to join a team, you move from independence to interdependence. And being interdependent means that you're selfless and you're giving and you're willing to give yourself up for the common good of the team. And sometimes your own abilities, even if you are getting better, have to take a back seat. So the patience word is a very strong word and very applicable to what they're doing here.
I see. I think back to my playing days. When I sat down with coach, I played 1 year varsity baseball. I was a late bloomer. And he told me, he said, you're not going to play for 3 years, but I want you to come. It wasn't go somewhere else and then transfer in. And back then, even in the 91 season, I don't think we had a overwhelmed or too large of a roster. The rosters got a little bit bigger after that. But, you know, I look at kids today and I wonder if you told a kid, hey, you're not going to play for 3 years, if they would still come, you know? And, you know, he said, look, you may have the opportunity to play your third year. And I did. I got really, really good, really, really fast. And then I got injured. And while it hurt, it was the worst thing I went through, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And then I learned to pitch after that. And that's when I pitched the most. But I look at kids today, and the minute something doesn't go right, they want to cash the check and move on, because they're looking for that short-term validation. And do you see with the kids today that it's, you know, we see them, they're so much more talented, but are they lacking more of the long-term belief in themselves, always looking for that short-term fix?
I think it's a couple things. It's really not totally their fault either. I mean, I think it's in the time in which they're raised. Yeah, I think it's our society and what's around them too. And because they live in a society where it's very easy to grab something quick, whether it's swiping right on your phone, whether it's just touching a button on your phone and have something at easy access, I think a lot of times we see that that's how life should move too. So yeah, I don't think that's unfair to assume that a lot of kids are that way. Now, I will say this. I think the magic behind a guy like Skip was his age, his wisdom, and that bald head. And I say that bald head because what that tells you is it's a guy with age. And I think with kids, and I'm not going to say that this is the case, but I'm going to say with kids, I think they're more trusting of someone that has age, wisdom, and thought. And for you to sit down in front of Coach Bertman, the program had some success, but also he was a guy that you could look at and say, yeah, I get that. And that's coming from a guy who's seen a lot. And I think even myself, as time has gone on in the 18 years at Vanderbilt, I think when we first started, we were looking for as many yeses as we possibly could. Today, we're still looking for yeses because recruiting is very, very competitive. But I think the area that I've shaped myself is rather than being a recruiter, it's more of a presenter. And presenting this particular situation is, does it fit for you? Because I've gone into more conversations of, you know, if it doesn't fit, that's okay. We're still going to be able to talk. We're still going to be able to have a friendship at some point in time. But you're really what you're trying to do is you're trying to discover and find the place that fits you as a person. And if this doesn't fit because you ask for too much,
Yep.
it's too tough academically, then you can move forward. And I think when you present kids that type of thought process, they take a little bit of a back seat and say, okay, I understand this. Not everything that we're doing right now, going back to the patience conversation we just had 5 minutes ago, has to happen right now on my clock, because it isn't your clock. It's not your clock at all. We didn't ask for a virus, but you know what? The virus happened because we can't play God. It's not our clock. We just have to navigate through it. So I think with kids too, they have to understand, and I think this whole situation in a lot of ways is good for kids, because it's allowing everyone to making everyone slow down. You got to go to your room for a while. You're grounded. What are you going to do? Well, do something, make something positive out of it. And I think a lot of cases when older people are talking to kids, I think they have the ability to see through it a little bit more.
Brilliant. Let's talk about the virus here.
Mm-hmm.
You had a special 2020 team, no doubt about it. You were doing some great things. And just all of a sudden, boom. I mean, we've never seen anything like this that just canceled. I mean, we've had rainouts, we've had delays. We had postponement of the football season for a week during 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
But this is unprecedented. We've never seen anything like this. Talk to me about what happened, that experience with you as a coach, because, I mean, we're trying to pull on ideas, but you're flying blind a little bit, and the decisions are happening so fast.
You're flying blind because you don't have any history to it. I mean, the only history I had was 1976 blizzard in New Hampshire when we were in our home for 3 weeks. We couldn't leave. And then 1980, going through that experience, just in terms of gas lines and, you had the hostage crisis. And that's when sport kind of interceded a little bit with the United States hockey team and kind of brought a country up, at least brought the confidence of the country up. But I think that this particular situation was different because you were telling kids very, very fast that the season was over. On Wednesday night, we were playing Toledo. On Thursday morning, the season was over. On Friday, we had our last meeting. And on Saturday and Sunday, fortunately, because a lot of teams didn't get this, we had exit meetings with every single kid. But at the same time, you're left with the collateral damage on how to explain it and what happened. And you really can't. And so basically how I've tried to help them is just keep moving forward, find the positives that are available in this particular situation. And there are many of them. You just have to be creative and you have to find them. But take the negative out of it. I detached myself right away from the emotions of what was going on. And maybe that's from age too. But I said, yeah, would have been exciting to see it. But you know what? Dayton had a hell of a basketball team.
Yeah.
Cornell had a hell of a hockey team, both men and women. So there were a lot of national championship aspirations that got taken away. But you know what? Life happens. And as I've told the kids that Ted Williams lost 3 years of his baseball career to the military. So when these things happen, you just move forward and you put great faith in what's going to happen. And I think as individuals, and I think at least from our baseball standpoint, because really that's all we can control in the thinking and the thought process is we just have to be good citizens. We have to do what educated people are telling us to do so that the health of our country gets better, so that we can return to some normalcy, whether it's 3 months from now, whether it's a year from now, whether it's 2 years from now. I don't know. And that's why I think a lot of people want to know, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? When's the season going to start? You know what? Screw the season. It doesn't matter right now. I mean, all that matters is the health of the country. And when the health of the country regains itself, then we might start. And it's not like, okay, June 1st, back to normal. It's not going to happen like that. It's going to take some time. So I just think that it's wise just to self-reflect and grow in areas that you've never grown before. I was personally competitive since 1975 every spring, and that's gone. So I'm looking at it as a complete positive.
What are you doing right now, personally? Because you've never had this time. I talked to a good friend of mine, John Brannon, who's the University of Cincinnati basketball coach. Mm-hmm. And I worked for Anthony Grant at Dayton when he was at Alabama. And we were talking about it, he goes, every coach wants time, but time scares us sometimes, because that means we're not doing what we want to be doing. And he's like, I'm trying to use this time to make me better, spend time with my family, which I normally don't get to do during this time of year. So I thought it was a really insight. What are you doing? What are you turning towards?
Hmm. Well, I don't want to make light of this when I say this, because I'm not trying to act cavalier about any of this. We just had a tornado here 3 weeks
Yeah.
ago, and it devastated Nashville, and it's taken lives, and it's taken homes and businesses and so on. But I think you become independent, and it becomes just you and whoever is close to you, which is Maggie, my wife, then I think it offers you a lot of great opportunities. And I think right now it's just trying to stay in routine. It's getting up and working out, and the ability to work out longer than you've worked out, so you can, you can potentially make your body better. And then I have been able to get to the office, and that has been a huge plus, because I've been able to get here, get a lot done, get some organization. As Anthony mentioned, some ways to get better. So I've done that. And then the night, stay in routine too. Maggie brings dinner by at 8 o'clock every night. We sit in the office, we eat dinner, have a glass of wine, and watch something. Watch something that makes sense, and that's been good for us. And then go home and usually walk, and then go to bed, and then do it again the next day.
So you guys
Day.
you all spend most of your day at the office?
I do. She does her thing during the course of the day, but we thought it was a good idea not to go home and eat every night, because we
I
eat
think it's
out
a great idea.
Yeah, so she just comes by the office. She surprises me, and we've had a great time. We really have. We enjoy one another. So, but at the same time, we're not around each other the entire part of the day. We play tennis with one another. So yeah, I just think it's the ability to share in conversations that we haven't shared in a while, especially this time of year, because you're so bottled up in competition. So I've really enjoyed this time, and I think she could say the same thing. I hope she could anyway.
What do you guys, have you done the Tiger Kings documentary yet on Netflix?
No, I don't know if I'm going to go down that road. I got kind of weirded out by the trailer, so I just think that I'm going to take a back seat on that. I got a couple things I want to see. Watched the OJ series again the other night, and that was so interesting, because that was an odd time of our life too. And see some other things. The 30 for 30s on ESPN are good, and then there's some neat documentaries. So it's more probably about, even though I think Tiger King in some ways is realistic, I just don't want to get weirded out by anything.
Yeah, no, it's Jerry Springer on steroids, and that's the scary thing.
Boy.
Because it's not scripted. That's the thing that's even worse. What's one documentary or one book that is the book or documentary that you would recommend that people probably don't know about? Like, like, what's your go-to? Even if they know about it, but what's your go-to?
Yeah, my go-to is, I keep going back to 1980. I really enjoyed that situation. That was indelible in my mind in terms of.
You were what, 13, 14 during that time?
No, I was 19. I was
19,
in prep
okay.
school. I was a postgraduate in prep school, and but I just enjoyed those players. I enjoyed that time. I enjoyed studying the Russian team. But I think World War II history too. I'm enthralled with that. The first movies I ever saw with my dad were Patton and Tora, Tora, Tora. And so I think from a military standpoint, he was the one that kind of guided me in that direction and pulled me towards it. But I got pulled towards it mentally. So I think there's a lot of things that I like to study from a World War II history standpoint. I like to study Winston Churchill. I like to read a lot of his things, but I'm not a big reader. My attention span kind of comes and goes. So if it's an audio situation that I can listen to when I work out, it suits me a little bit better.
I've got a recommendation for you then. There's a book called Ghost Soldiers. Have you read that or heard that?
No.
Oh, so it's about, I listened to it as an audiobook one day when I was driving. It's about an 8-hour book, which is great for me because it keeps my attention. Because I can hit it in multiple blocks. But it was about the soldiers that freed the prisoners from the Bataan Death March. And what was brilliant about it was they put together a Marine unit, and I'm not going to spoil it, but they put together a Marine unit, and the question was, we need men to sign up who will not live. And out of 100 men they asked, 100 men signed up. In other words, this was a death march. You will not survive this mission. And they're the ghost soldiers because they moved like ghosts through the jungles of the Philippines to free the men. And what was fascinating was when they talked about where they were imprisoned, how the soldiers over years had created roads in the prison camp, and they had Friday night, Broadway night, and how they took the time mentally to cope with the uncertainty of being tortured, but also being in heinous conditions in the heat of the Philippines jungle and not knowing what was going on in the world around them, and how they survived through just horrendous sewage. And it was just a brilliant, brilliant book. And it's very fitting for what's going on today, because we don't know who our ghost soldiers are going to be that are going to cure us of this virus type of thing. Brilliant, brilliant book. Highly recommend it.
That's a good point. Did it hold your attention the entire time? It did.
Nonstop. Yes.
Okay.
I'm like you.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. You're not as hot as me, but
I've got books that I'm sitting here reading that, I get about a third way through, and then I'm like, okay, I got what I wanted out of it. And then I don't get back to it.
Yeah.
But this one, I couldn't turn it off. I was running errands for my wife to try to listen to it. Put it to you that way.
Okay. Good. I'm going to get it. I will. Thank you, Brett.
That's a great one. When you look at developing coaches, and recommending to coaches, what are some foundational elements that you want them to really focus on? Like somebody who a young coach who's in the field, in the industry, who's trying to get better. Where would you guide them?
Organization of time, I think makes a good coach. I think the coaches that you talk to, all of them are going to have some type of skill set for, in this case, baseball. But I like a coach that can organize time well, and someone who's very motivated by what they're doing, and just has a high care level for everything. And I say the organization of time because I think someone who organizes time well can get into their environment, the baseball environment, and really put together a very structured plan for himself, for our recruiting, for the people that he's guiding every day and mentoring, but yet at the same time have the ability to get back in his home and apply his care in that direction too. And balance, which is kind of odd for me to say because I can't tell you that that's something I've ever perfected or have any, but I think that the assistants that at least we've looked for, and I can say all three of the assistants here and staff members for that matter are very qualified in that area, and I love it. And I love the fact that their wives are so ingrained in our program, and I think that's another thing that I probably look for is just having a very, very supportive mate, someone that enjoys that their husband is doing this and enjoys the sacrifice that they're making with someone else's child, because really when you're a coach, at least at this level, 75% of your time is taken with someone else's child. And quite frankly, a wife has to be comfortable with that. They can't be resentful of it, because if they are, it's not going to work out for them. It's not going to work out for him. He's always going to feel distracted and pulled, and that's really not what you want. So I think in trying to make this environment a very, and I hesitate saying family because family is sometimes overused, that's what we want it to be. Maggie and I have always wanted this to be something where the wives and the kids are very comfortable about being here, because it brings great harmony to the life of that coach when they feel comfort at home and comfort here. But I think it all starts with the organization of their brain.
What about, I agree. And you look at the parents. When I watch one of your games on TV, or I see you guys at Hoover, and I watch, because I'm going to watch you guys because of the talent and the way that y'all play baseball. It's very it's very consistent to the way I like to watch baseball. What about that? It's the parents are tremendous advocates for your program. So a lot of coaches get stressed by parents.
Yeah, well, I think you can. And I think the thing you have to understand going into this is parents love their kids. They really, really love their kids. And with love, sometimes it comes distortion, and you can't blame them either. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
we had a daughter that went here, and Maggie and I learned this from Bruce Brown, is we released the opportunity to her. We just weren't going to get involved. I mean, I saw her play twice in 4 years. I mean, and she's not scarred by it. I got to see her train more than I got to see her play. And Maggie, who was a Hall of Fame college tennis player herself, watched from afar too. But I thought, Jeff McDonald, who is still here and is just such a tremendous teacher, I thought he did such a good job with her, because the reality was Hannah lost her scholarship here, had to retain it because she left, and then really didn't have any type of success until her senior year. So I think for a lot of parents, that would have been hard to take. But I think in her case, that was the bed that she made. That's what she had to sift through. But I look back and think about that, and I think, parents, if they get to the point where they love their child enough, where they can release the opportunity to them, that they're really doing their child a favor, because they leave the situations and the decision making of what their child is doing to the kid. And I think the best compliment you can get as a parent is when you can hand the keys to your child and say, you know what, we created a foundation for you. Now it's your opportunity to go out and take the foundation that you've learned from under this roof and use it to your advantage. And when parents can do that, they're really empowering their child to make decisions and choices on their own. Now, not to say a kid can't call back and say, hey, Mom, what do you think here? Dad, what do you think here? That's no problem. But I think when you get to a point where a kid can start doing those things on their own, I think what you're going to have is a very independent, a very strong and strong-fibered son or daughter, for that matter.
I love how you said that, to release the opportunity to your kid. It's, I learned with my father and my mom that they wanted me to have a better future than they had, but it wasn't about them guaranteeing the future. It was about them giving me the skills to be prepared for the future. I think that's a very strong statement of releasing the opportunity. There comes a point where, because I tell players a lot, and this happens in every sport. If you're not playing, you must get better. It's a simple formula. I've never seen a coach who doesn't like a player. I mean, they may not like them, but if they still get it done and they can trust them, they will play them.
Right.
But if you're on the fringe and you have other reasons why they don't like you,
right,
you're not going to class, you're not taking care of your business, you're not listening, it's hard for them to invest in you. Nobody gets better under pressure. You have to perform elsewhere first. And you got to explain that to your parents.
Yep. And that's not always easy, because as I said, your parents want you to be exposed to the best situation possible. They see great things for you as a kid, and they see great things for you as you start to get older too. But experiences are all different. They come and go. And I think a lot of appreciation from kids is usually about, I think it's the 10-year factor. It's after 10 years past their situation, they kind of look back on it, and they can look back on it with greater perspective than they did when they were going through it. And I think, for parents, that's sometimes tough. For some, it's not. But I think to your point, what you started off with, I do think we have wonderful parents, but we separate it quick, and we make that known in the classroom. Very first meeting, this is your situation and only your situation. It's not to say your parents can't call back and talk to me about your mental well-being or your academics, but when it comes to baseball, this is yours. Derek Jeter wasn't calling Joe Torre and saying, hey, Joe, I want Derek to hit second tonight or hit third, and I want him playing shortstop every day. No, this is Derek's situation. This is Derek's opportunity. So just release it to him.
I bet you find that out in recruiting too, don't you? Of who can follow that rule and who can't.
I think, Brad, and you know this, it takes 2 minutes to find that out.
Yes, it does.
If parents can sit on a couch and let their son or daughter handle the discussion and handle that meeting, you've got something. And you see some parents handle that so well. And then you have parents that they want to answer the questions for their kids. And right then and there that it's probably going to be a tough situation for that young man or young daughter.
I agree. Last question I have for you, then I'm going to let you go back to doing your business.
No.
You're a catalyst for people's change, their growth, their development. And what do you want to be? What do you want to leave the game as? As how do you want people to say, I had the chance to learn, see, grow, play for, and that? What is the footprint you want to leave?
Oh, I think simply just to drive the passion of an individual towards what they want, to drive their care level for what they're doing. And I said passion because I think passion is all. It's the passion for how you train. It's the passion for how you prepare. It's the passion for relationships. It's the passion for respect. It's the passion for your wife. It's the passion for your kids. I just think if you're really, really emotional and passionate about something, then I think you're going to be exposed to the Valvano factor. I think you're just there's going to be a lot of emotion tied up in what you do. And I've always wanted this program to be that. I wear my emotions on my shirt sleeve a lot of times. Unless it's in a game, then I try to be a better face for the kids. But I think a lot of times when you're going through this experience, you are who you are. It's real. You're just you're a parent. You're a mentor. You're an uncle. You're whatever. And I think, Brett, that's where step parenting has probably helped me. And I know I've used this example almost every time I speak, but it has, because when you learn to love someone else's children, you're essentially doing similar things in this environment too. And it doesn't mean that you're going to like them all the time. There's going to be times where you get disappointed in them, but it doesn't mean you have to drop the word care or love or whatever level that you get to with any kid. And I don't want to sound flowery, but I think it is our responsibility when we're in this position that we have an effect, and a positive effect on kids. You're not always going to create the best experience for every kid, because you can't make everyone happy. It's just not going to happen. But at the same time, you can create an environment, people, and place that has the ability for a kid to really grow. And I think if we did that and taught them what it feels like to be passionate about something you're doing, then I think that would be something that I would always want to be left with.
I got to ask you one more question.
Yep.
The feeling when you see the Dogpile as a coach, what is that feeling?
Christmas. Well, I mean, to me, it's just like letting the kids open the gifts. It's like, don't go in there and join that. Stay away. It's gratifying, because I think at least the second time we're very fortunate. You don't get to win national championships. Winning a national championship is so far over the top. I never thought that was going to happen. And the fact that Vanderbilt could have done that 2 times is really unfathomable. But the reason I bring it up is not to brag about doing it twice. It's because I was better prepared to view it and take it in the second time, because I sat back the first time, but the second time you can see the kids, you can see the staff, and you can see the fans. And I think when we won it the first time, the most enjoyable thing I saw is we had everyone up to our room, not the players. The players had their own deal, but we had all the staff and some close friends up to our room. And after about 3 hours, I left, and I just went. There was an atrium at the hotel we were at, and I heard a lot of noise, and it was all the Vanderbilt fans. And I just stood at the top of the atrium. No one could see me. And I just looked down, and I said, I just want to recover this moment, because if I could just pause time, so many people were engaged with one another and having a good time because of a group of kids that brought them to it, and they brought themselves to it. And it was such a celebratory moment that I guess that's the thing I've learned too, is exuberation and devastation are very much related, because they're so extreme and they're so emotional that they don't happen often. And when they do, you really, really feel them. And I think the center point of life is really the area I've tried to get to as much as possible. And I learned it from watching that, and certainly have watched it from grief too. And they're not easy to be in, regardless of how high or low. They're very difficult to sit in for a long period of time. So it's always trying to get back to a center point.
Yeah. You just brought up grief, and I know you had it as a coach.
Yep.
Can you share with our listeners just a minute of that? I feel like I'm taking, I know you haven't given me a time limit, but I'm so respectful of your time because this is the wisdom moment for me, but can you talk about that? That was a tragic, tragic situation.
Yeah, it was really tragic. And, to say that, I feel like I'm out of place, because Teddy and Susan, Donny Everett's parents, live this every day. They're still suffering. That's a scar that never gets filled in. People say time does a lot. Time helps, but when you're a parent, those things, time doesn't really help at all. It sometimes it just makes matters worse. But for the kids, it was picking up the pieces, and it took. I didn't think, Brett, our program would ever get back to where it was. It happened in 16, and 17 and 18 were very difficult. We experienced some game success, but I just didn't ever feel like it would ever get back to feeling the way it did prior to losing Donnie. But what we did is we worked through it as best we possibly could. And there were times where Maggie and I had to get off to the side, away from everyone, and kind of share our own grief with one another. But I think that's what made last year so memorable, because number one, the Everetts were exposed to it, and they were part of our program, and they were there. And then I think for that the senior group that could complete a circle, knowing that you're on the front row of a funeral of a best friend, and that during their senior year, they could actually win a national championship, and feel those two emotions that I just talked about. Because I think when they first came here, they go, I can't believe I'm going through this. I didn't sign up for this, and no one signed up for it, but you had to work through it. And I think their skin thickened up a lot. I think their fibers, they developed some fibers that they never thought they had. No one wanted that, but there again, we would never be as close to the Everetts, I guess, if it wasn't for that situation. And then the positive that we took from it is the Everetts are part of our staff. We do as much as we can with them, but at the same time, it'll never replace Donnie, and that was a hard period of life to live.
Yeah, I went to a conference in January, and the husband and wife of I'm just blanking on the name of the Washington State quarterback who committed suicide, the Helinskis.
Mm-hmm.
You could just feel that pain.
Yeah.
And it made me think about Donny Everett because of that happened during the season, if I'm not mistaken, right? I mean, that happened.
Yeah, it happened before the first game of a regional.
Regional, yeah. I just can't imagine. As a coaching staff, that's not what you don't sign up for it, but you're called into it, and it was bittersweet to see the senior class be able to win that and celebrate with the Everetts.
Yeah.
And I know probably from a distance what that meant to them. Me judging that of sadness, but also the opportunity to honor him in that way was probably pretty special.
Yeah, I hope so. At least it offered a little bit of happiness during that time. But I can't imagine the thoughts that continued to go through their mind during it too.
All right, last question, I promise. What is the joy that you're going to have when you go back out on the field for the next time?
Just the recovering of the emotion that you have. I think that's the one thing, Brett, not to go in a different direction with the question, but I think this continues to help too, is it allows you to understand what you had and how it can be taken away from you at any time. And that we're all renting whatever we have. We're renting relationships. People can move away from it. I know one thing. I don't want to retire at all. I don't know what retire Well, I do.
You're doing it. Yeah.
The time of reflection is my life, how important girls are, and how important opportunities like talking to you is. Because if I didn't do this, we wouldn't have a relationship. We wouldn't have this opportunity. And so I do. I have these circumstances, and I think that's what I'll. When I get back on the field, those are the reflective moments that I'm going to have as healthy as we are.
Yeah, we get to play the game.
Yes, for sure.
Coach, thank you for doing this, and thank you for your. You've given me over the years a brilliant ability to watch baseball play the way I love to watch the game.
Well, thank you.
You know, I was fortunate enough to be around a great era at LSU baseball, and Skip is still a very dear mentor of mine. And I know what his footprint is on the game. I'm able to watch you do that too, and um, I've watched you speak at ABCA. You and I've instant message. We've been meaning to do this for some time, and I'm glad that we're able to do it. So continued success, continued development of your players, and this time will pass. And when you're in Hoover, we'll get together for dinner one night.
Thank you, Brett. Likewise, I appreciate the opportunity. I do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, bud.